So there's been a lot of good news recently about the regular iPhone 17, with its headline upgrade being 120Hz, but it seems this device may have an Achilles heel, which is an older chipset. According to Jeff Pu, the base 17 will continue using the A18 with 8 gigs of RAM, whereas the 17 Air will get the A19, and the 17 Pros will get the A19 Pro. The A18 is based on TSMC's second generation 3nm N3E process, but the A19 and A19 Pro will be based on TSMC's third generation 3nm N3P process. I know we may see price increases because of tariffs, which I'll get to, and so maybe Apple's trying to maximize profits by recycling what they can from previous models, but also if Apple's going to be producing a bin version of the A19 for the Air, I think it makes more sense to bring that to the base model as well. I will say though, if this does end up being the case, I really won't be disappointed because year-over-year upgrades are quite minimal with Apple's chipsets, and so the A18 is still plenty fine for most consumers, but I do think we're gonna see the A19. There are other upgrades to look forward to though with the base iPhone 17 because we have news from Ross Young that the base model will now be 6.3 inches, and this is great news. I was actually fine with the 6.1 inch form factor, but I do love the thinner bezels the 16 Pro had, so that's now coming to the regular 17, and that's great. This does mean that on the front, the 17 and 17 Pro will virtually be identical with the same 6.3 inch 120Hz panels, which is why there is a small chance Apple does give the 17 slightly thicker bezels to set it apart, but I'm hoping that's not the case. Now, because Ross Young is a display guru, he has said the 17 and 17 Pro should specifically be 6.27 inches, which will be rounded up to 6.3 inches, and the 17 Pro Max will specifically be 6.86 inches, which will be rounded up to 6.9 inches. That's the same as the 16 Pro Max. The 17 Air, on the other hand, will be 6.5 inches, which will be rounded up to 6.6 inches in the marketing material. And if you're wondering why this is a little smaller than the 17 Pro Max, it's because Apple was afraid this would bend if it was 6.9 inches. Now let's talk about price hikes, because after years and years of the base Pro iPhone staying at $999, it seems this year will be the year prices do actually go up, unfortunately. I know we hear this all the time and then Apple never changes the price, but obviously with the 20% US tariffs on goods from China in place, that does make price increases much more likely this year. However, Apple apparently is going to justify these price hikes with design changes and new features, rather than attributing them to US tariffs on goods from China. According to supply chain sources, Apple would have trouble making up for China tariff costs solely by seeking further savings from its suppliers, meaning a hit to its profit margin was likely unless it could raise prices. At the same time, company execs are wary of blaming increases on tariffs. When a news report in April said Amazon might show the impact of tariffs to its shoppers, the White House called it a hostile act, and Amazon quickly said the idea was never approved and is not going to happen. So basically, Apple doesn't want to piss off Trump, and so instead, it's going to find other reasons other than tariffs to explain the move. Now, what new features that were going to justify the price increase were not determined, but I guess the iPhone 17's new design will play a role. The Air and Pro will look visually different and would stand out compared to older iPhone models and help justify a price increase, but I also think there is a possibility we see storage upgrades. It certainly would be nice if the base models were 256 gigs and the Pros were 512, but that might be too generous, so it's possible the regular 17 stays at 128 and the Air and regular only go up to 256. You may be thinking though, why not move production outside of China? Well, Apple has built up inventory and shifted manufacturing for the US market to India. Tim Cook even stated earlier this month that a majority of iPhones shipped to the US in the April to June quarter would come from India. However, Chinese factories will have to continue handling most production for the Pro and Pro Max, as India's infrastructure and technical capabilities aren't yet sufficient to support mass production at China's scale. So what are we thinking could be the new prices? Well, I don't think in 1 year prices will go above $100. The absolute worst case scenario is the iPhone 17 starting at $899, the 17S starting at $999, the 17 Pro starting at $1099, and the 17 Pro Max starting at $1299. Whether these phones can justify that small increase remains to be seen. I mean, yes, the design is changing and there'll be the usual performance and camera upgrades, but these are by no means groundbreaking changes. And with inflation already bad as is, it is going to be hard for consumers to justify this, which makes older iPhones even more enticing. You know what else is enticing? Clicking that subscribe button. So do it now. It's free and will bring you the latest of Apple right to the subscription box, so please consider it. Join the Saran Bite gang now. And the bad news continues, because it seems when you want a razor-thin iPhone, the battery also becomes razor-thin, and we have news there are concerns about the battery life on iPhone 17 Air. And so as a result, Apple is going to be relaunching the MagSafe power bank to fix this, making it thicker and defeating the purpose of a thin iPhone. So this information comes from The Information, yes, that's the name of the source, and they tell us in internal testing, only 60 to 70% of iPhone users will be able to use a 17 Air for a full day of usage, which is below the 80 to 90% metric Apple was targeting. And so as a result, Apple will be relaunching the MagSafe power bank to mitigate this. They had originally launched this with the iPhone 12 series, but then discontinued them in 2023 because Apple had shifted to USB-C accessories and wanted to kill lightning. So I'm assuming this new MagSafe power bank will look the same, but will now come with the USB-C port instead. Now I can't lie, this is disappointing news because earlier rumors had said this iPhone wouldn't be that much worse endurance-wise because it would include a high-density battery, which allows a lot of energy to be stored within a small physical space, and so I assumed Apple might be able to cram in a 4,300 or 4,400 mAh battery, which wouldn't be too bad considering the Plus right now has a 4,674 mAh cell. I mean, we have Android phones packing in 6,000 mAh cells in pretty slim devices, and so I assumed Apple could do the same, but it seems that maybe they can't scale up that technology, and so I'm going to assume the physical battery is going to take a massive hit. We do have the C1 modem inside, that should help with efficiency since we did see battery gains with the iPhone 16e, but either way, if you have to rely on a power bank to get through a regular day of usage, this phone is kind of doomed. I mean, as I said earlier in the video, the whole point of this phone is that it's razor thin, but if you're going to be using a power bank most of the time, then why buy this? I mean, the Mini also had battery issues, but at least it offered a compact form factor that no other iPhone had. The Air will feel like pretty much every other big screen iPhone. The thinness was its biggest selling point, but once you slap a power bank on this, that USB becomes redundant. But coming back to the iPhone 17, at the very least, you don't have to worry about this iPhone bending in your pocket because it's apparently going to use a mix of aluminium and titanium, and we saw how Apple improved the structural integrity of the iPad Pro despite making the chassis thinner. So yes, you don't have to worry about the Air being 5.5mm thin. Also, as I'd said at the beginning of the video, Apple has gone with a 6.6-inch display to prevent it from bending, since the original plan was to make this as big as the Pro Max. And ultimately, don't get me wrong, aesthetically this iPhone is going to look amazing, and it's an engineering marvel they made this so thin, and also still managed to fit in the action button and camera control, but I'm really worried about the battery life. Now, if you were excited for the anti-reflective coating, stop being excited, because that's being cancelled. So Leaker Instant Digital had told us that similar to the Galaxy S24 and S25 Ultra, the iPhone 17 Pro could use an anti-reflective coating, which would make the display more visible when outdoors in direct sunlight. However, it seems Apple's run into problems scaling up the display coating process. Adding this coating to the millions of devices Apple produces would have taken longer than expected, and Apple obviously wants production to go as smoothly as possible, and so as a result, it's been cancelled. The new display coating process was also supposed to be more scratch resistant, and so it seems now that Apple is going to stick to using the newer version of ceramic shields that was introduced with the iPhone 16 series. I know for those who use a screen protector, the anti-reflector coating wouldn't have made a big difference, but either way, it would have been a cool upgrade, so I'm a little bummed this is not coming to the iPhone 17. Now let's talk about a groundbreaking change coming to the Pro models, because we have news about a new color. But it's not just any color, because the Sierra Blue iPhone 13 Pro has been reborn. We have news that we could see a new sky blue color option on iPhone 17 Pro, and this gets me tingling. So previously, John Prosser told us that we could see a silver, black and white iPhone 17 Pro, and I was pretty disappointed by this news because with Apple switching to aluminium on iPhone 17 Pro, I thought we could see more exciting colors with the Pro phones, and silver, black and white is not exciting. Now, however, we have a leak from Majimbu telling us the sky blue shade we saw with the MacBook Air may also be coming to the iPhone, and while if you mock this up, they look serially similar to Sierra Blue from the iPhone 13 Pro series. Majimbu does tell us it'll be a more refined version of that shade, whatever that means. How can you refine a color? I have no idea, but anyway, he does say it's going to be brighter, which I hope is the case. It should not look grey in most lighting conditions. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.